A routine traffic stop. A police officer pulls over a car, unaware of the shocking twist that's about to unfold. But what if the person in that car wasn't just any driver? What if she was a judge, a respected authority figure in the very system he serves? What happens when a black female judge is arrested by mistake? And how does the officer's deep racial bias lead to a jaw-dropping confrontation that will forever change both of their lives? In today's video, we'll break down a shocking case of mistaken identity where a police officer's assumptions collide with the reality of who he's dealing with. But there's more to this story than just a mistake. This incident becomes a powerful lesson in accountability. How does the officer react when he realizes who he's arresting? And what happens when the tables are turned? Stick with us till the end, because this story isn't just about a moment of tension. It's about a chance for change, a lesson learned, and the consequences of racial bias in law enforcement. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand the critical importance of accountability, but you'll see how one powerful moment can shape perceptions and spark conversations about race and justice. It's a typical afternoon, the kind where the streets hum with the usual noise of traffic. The officer, just doing his routine patrol, spots a car that seems out of place. Without a second thought, he flicks on his sirens and pulls the car over. The driver, a black woman, calmly pulls over to the side of the road. At first glance, the officer doesn't think much of it. To him, it's just another stop. He approaches the vehicle, but as he gets closer, he doesn't know who he's dealing with. Inside the car, sitting quietly, is someone with a presence, someone whose demeanor is calm, controlled, almost regal. The officer, however, doesn't see that. Instead, he makes an assumption, a judgment based on the color of her skin, the car she's driving, perhaps even the time of day. His mind jumps to conclusions. He thinks she might be involved in something suspicious, something that doesn't align with who she really is. Without hesitation, he orders her out of the car. The woman, cool and composed, steps out and asks him what's going on. She's trying to explain, trying to de-escalate, but the officer is already fixated on the idea that this woman who's just sitting in her car must be someone involved in criminal activity. The officer doesn't recognize her, doesn't take a moment to pause and question his actions. Instead, he moves forward with the arrest. The whole thing happens so fast. His orders are firm, his actions swift, yet his judgment is clouded. He's not aware that he's about to make a huge mistake. This is where the tension begins to build. The officer, in his rush to act, overlooks the most important thing. The woman in the car is no ordinary person. She's a judge, and not just any judge, but a respected, high-ranking figure in the legal system. But the officer doesn't see that. He sees only what his mind tells him to see: a black woman, a potential suspect, and nothing more. And just like that, the arrest is underway, and the officer, driven by unconscious bias, mistakes the woman for someone she's not. The moment the officer begins to place her in handcuffs, the woman speaks up. Her voice is calm, even measured, as she tries to reason with him. "Sir, you've made a mistake," she says, not with anger, but with the quiet authority of someone used to being listened to. "I'm a judge. You're arresting me by mistake." But the officer, still focused on his task, doesn't seem to hear her. His mind is racing, and it's clear that he's already convinced of her guilt. He doesn't flinch. The words she's saying don't seem to register. Instead, he moves forward, determined to complete the arrest. He doesn't stop to consider that the woman standing before him might be more than what he assumes her to be. Her tone doesn't change, though. She remains composed, not raising her voice, but speaking with clear authority. "I am a judge. I'm telling you that this is a mistake. You need to check your information." Still, there's no change in the officer's stance. He's unyielding, focused only on the instructions running through his head, the procedures he's been trained to follow, without questioning whether they apply to this specific situation. She repeats herself, not frustrated, but firm. "Please, I'm asking you to verify my identity. You'll see, I'm not who you think I am." The officer, still without hesitation, seems almost indifferent to her words. He doesn't recognize the woman standing before him, doesn't take the time to step back and assess the situation. He's just doing his job, or so he believes. In his mind, this is just another case, another routine stop. But he's missing something, the crucial detail that would make all the difference. Despite her calmness, despite the hint of authority in her voice, the officer isn't listening. He's too focused on carrying out the arrest, too set in his belief that his actions are justified. The confusion continues to grow as the situation spirals further from what should have been a simple misunderstanding. As the officer continues with the arrest, the judge realizes just how deeply the misunderstanding has gone. She takes a deep breath, steadying herself. In that moment, she could have reacted in anger, frustration, or fear, all emotions that might have led the situation to spiral out of control. But she doesn't. Instead, she maintains her calm, her demeanor unwavering. With quiet authority, she steps back slightly and addresses the officer again. "I need you to listen," she says, her voice firm but not threatening. "I am a judge. You are making a mistake. Please take a moment to verify my identity." The officer, still unmoved, continues with his actions. But the judge's calmness doesn't waver. She knows that if she allows herself to become upset or defensive, it will only escalate the situation. Instead, she speaks clearly, her words deliberate. "I am a judge. You're arresting the wrong person. This is a mistake, and I'm asking you to correct it." Her presence in the moment is striking. While the officer's actions remain forceful, the judge's composure begins to shift the dynamic. It's clear that she's not just any person on the street. She's someone with the ability to stay calm in the face of crisis, to assert her position without raising her voice or causing a scene. She continues explaining the situation with clarity, offering details of her role in the legal system, hoping the officer will take a step back and listen. Had the judge lost her cool, this moment could have taken a much darker turn. If she had become angry, defensive, or combative, the officer might have reacted in kind, further escalating the tension. But instead, she chooses to remain composed, to assert her authority with dignity. Her response, though firm, is never disrespectful. She's fully aware of the power of her words and how they could potentially defuse a situation that could easily spiral out of control. Through this approach, she not only asserts her rights, but also teaches a quiet lesson in restraint. In this moment, her calm is the anchor that keeps the situation from spiraling into something far worse. As the judge continues to calmly explain her position, there's a shift in the officer's demeanor. For a moment he pauses. The words she's speaking seem to finally break through the fog of his assumptions. "I'm a judge," she repeats slowly and deliberately. The officer's eyes widen, his hands stilling for the briefest second. It's as if the weight of her words finally lands. The person he's been treating like an ordinary suspect is someone with far more authority than he ever imagined. His mind races, processing the truth of the situation, and for the first time, his certainty falters. He's not dealing with just another civilian. He's facing a person of power, a professional who commands respect, someone whose identity should have been recognized long before this moment. The officer's face shifts as the realization settles, and a flush of red creeps across his cheeks, his posture suddenly stiffening. His hands, which had been poised to continue with the arrest, now hang by his sides. The judgment that had driven his actions is replaced by something else: embarrassment. His earlier confidence crumbles as he realizes the mistake he's made. In the silence that follows, he stammers, slightly unsure of what to say next. I didn't know," he mutters, his voice quieter than before. The words feel inadequate for the situation, but they are all he can manage at this point. The judge, though still composed, watches him, her gaze steady, but not unkind. She doesn't need to say much more. The officer knows he's messed up, and the shame is clear on his face. As the moment stretches, the officer, now fully aware of the gravity of his mistake, begins to apologize. "I'm sorry," he says, his tone sincere, though tinged with the discomfort of realizing how deeply he had misjudged her. The apology feels awkward, almost rushed, but it's clear that he understands the weight of what's just happened. This wasn't just a case of mistaking a driver for someone else. It was a clear lapse in judgment fueled by unconscious bias assumptions about who should be driving a certain car or who could be involved in a crime. This moment hits him hard, not just because of the error in front of him, but because it forces him to confront the biases he didn't even know he was carrying. As a law enforcement officer, he's supposed to be objective to serve and protect all equally. But in this instant, his actions reveal how deeply race can influence the way people are treated, even by those sworn to uphold the law. The officer likely walks away from this experience with a renewed understanding of the importance of questioning assumptions and recognizing the subtle biases that can shape decisions, especially in high-pressure situations. As the officer stands there still processing the weight of his mistake, the judge's calm response begins to sink in. What could have easily turned into a confrontation or a heated argument instead becomes a powerful teaching moment. She didn't just correct the officer's mistake, she gave him a chance to reflect on his actions to understand the deeper issue at play. Her words were not just about identifying herself as a judge, they were a quiet reminder of the responsibility officers hold when it comes to respect and fairness. The judge's composed demeanor wasn't just a personal trait, it was a deliberate choice. She understood that this wasn't merely about proving her own innocence or asserting her own authority. It was about teaching the officer a lesson he might not have even realized he needed to learn. By staying calm, by staying firm, but respectful, she made it clear that her identity wasn't the only thing that mattered. What was truly important was how he approached every individual regardless of their race or appearance. Her response shines a light on the broader issue of racial bias in law enforcement. This wasn't an isolated incident, but a moment that reflects a much larger problem: the assumptions made about people of color, especially black individuals, when they interact with the police. It's a problem rooted in a history of systemic racism, where the biases often unconscious that officers hold can influence their decisions and the way they treat those they encounter. In the judge's calm explanation, there's a stark contrast to the officer's initial behavior, an embodiment of the difference between seeing someone as a person with respect and dignity versus seeing them through the lens of stereotype and bias. The lesson, though subtle, is profound. It's not just about understanding who you're dealing with, but recognizing that everyone deserves to be treated with fairness regardless of their appearance or background. This incident brings much-needed attention to these deep-seated issues within policing. It's a reminder that even those in positions of power like the officer can be influenced by unconscious biases. And it's a call for change, urging law enforcement to actively confront and address these biases in order to serve and protect everyone equally. The judge's response wasn't just a correction of one officer's mistake, but a catalyst for a conversation that needs to be had on a much wider scale. This incident, though seemingly a small moment in time, has the potential to spark much larger conversations about race justice and the biases that run deep within law enforcement. When stories like this reach the public, they force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that bias can exist at all levels of society, especially within the institutions that are meant to protect and serve. It's easy to think of racism as something overt, something that can be seen in obvious acts of discrimination. But this incident reveals how deeply ingrained biases, even unconscious ones, can shape the way people are treated based on their race. The officer's mistake wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a reflection of how racial assumptions influence our actions, even when we don't intend them to. This is a reality that many people of color face on a daily basis, often in subtle ways that are hard to pinpoint. When someone is treated unfairly simply because of the color of their skin, it reinforces the systemic racism that is woven into the fabric of society. This story brings that issue to the forefront, offering a glimpse into how these biases play out in real-world situations. In sharing this story, it's likely that more people will begin to question their own assumptions, to think twice about how they judge others based on their appearance. The officer's initial actions, unthinking and biased, showed just how important it is for all of us to be aware of the biases we carry. It's easy to overlook, to assume that we're not part of the problem, but stories like this challenge us to take a hard look at the world around us and ask ourselves difficult questions. For those who watch this story unfold, there's an opportunity to learn and grow from it. This might inspire people to reflect on how their own biases influence their behavior, whether they're interacting with a stranger on the street or working within institutions like law enforcement, education, or healthcare. It's a chance for individuals to examine how bias affects the treatment of others and to take responsibility for making sure those biases don't dictate their actions. The powerful lesson here is that everyone has a role to play in addressing racial bias, both in society at large and in everyday interactions. This story isn't just about one officer making a mistake. It's a broader reminder of the need for accountability and for everyone to actively work towards fairness, justice, and equality. By shining a light on this incident, we're encouraged to ask, how can we as individuals recognize and challenge our own biases? How can we ensure that people, regardless of their race, are treated with the respect and dignity they deserve? In conclusion, this incident serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of recognizing and addressing bias, especially in positions of power like law enforcement. The officer's mistake, fueled by unconscious assumptions, highlights how crucial it is for everyone, especially those entrusted with enforcing the law, to be aware of the biases that shape their actions. This story isn't just about one person's mistake. It's a call for greater accountability and self-awareness in all of us. Moments like these, though challenging, can lead to positive change. They create opportunities for reflection, growth, and a deeper understanding of how we treat others regardless of their race. If we take the lessons learned from this situation to heart, we can help create a more just and equal society for everyone. If this video has made you think, we encourage you to reflect on the lessons it shares and consider how you can be more mindful of your own biases. And if you found this video insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content. Thanks for watching, and we hope you'll join us again for more important discussions. The story presented in this video is a fictional scenario created for the purpose of discussing important social issues, such as racial bias, justice, and accountability in law enforcement. While the themes explored are real and relevant, the specific events and characters in this story are not based on actual events.